Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome to the Level 2 class today. We are moving to the second part of Chapter 3, although I actually didn't finish half of Chapter 3 last time. So I think we finished till verse 3.9. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, I thought I'm actually going a little slow because I was supposed to do half a chapter in one class, and I had finished only nine. But I got an information from someone that I'm going a little too fast, so request for slowing down. So then I know, okay, so that I can slow down a little. I need not go fast. So if anybody's in disagreement with that, also please kindly share. I'll just sing a quick kirtan before we start. So those of you who are doing japa can also continue and finish in the meantime. I'll do a quick kirtan to set the mood for the class. So this is Bhajahu Re Mana Shri Nanda Nandana by Govind Das Kaviraj. It goes like this. Bhajahu Re Mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Bhajahu Re Mana Shri Nanda Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Durlabha Manava Janama Satsange Durlabha Manava Janama Satsange Taru Hoye Bhava Sindhure Shita Atapa Bata Barishana Edina Jamini Jagire Shita Atapa Bata Barishana Edina Jamini Jagire Biphala Sevinu Kripana Durajana Biphala Sevinu Kripana Durajana Biphala Sevinu Kripana Durajana Chapala Sukhalava Lagire E Dhana Yovana Putra Parijana इथे किया छे परती तीरे ए धन यौवना पुत्र परिजना इथे किया छे परी तीरे कमल दल जल जीवन टल मला कमल दल जल जीवन टल मला कमल दल जल जीवन टल मला भजहु हरि पद नीति रे श्रवण कीर्तन स्मरण वंदन पाद सेवन दास्य रे श्रवण कीर्तन स्मरण वंदन पाद सेवन दास्य रे पूजन सखी जन आत्मनिवेदन पूजन सखी जन आत्मनिवेदन पूजन सखी जन आत्मनिवेदन गोविंद दास अभिलाष रे भजहु रे मन श्री नंद नंदन Abhaya Charanara Vindare. Okay, Hare Krishna. So the meaning of this beautiful verse song by Govind Das Kaviraj is that, oh mind, let me always worship the lotus feet of the son of Nanda, which makes anyone fearless. And having obtained this rare human birth, let me cross over this ocean of worldly existence through the association of um, saintly persons. Second verse says that both on the day and night I am remaining sleepless. I am suffering pains of heat, cold, wind, rain, and for a fraction of flickering happiness I am serving uselessly wicked and miserly men. And the third verse says, whatever assurance of real happiness is there in all one's wealth, youthfulness, sons, family members, there is no assurance. This life is tottering, just like a drop of water on a lotus petal. Therefore, you should always serve and worship the divine feet of Lord Hari. And the last verse says that it is the last verse talking about how Govinda Das is expressing his desire and his great longing to engage himself in the 9 processes of bhakti. So, Shravana, Kirtana, Smarana, Vandana, Pada Sevana, Dasya, Pujana, Sakhijana, Atma Nivedana. So, these are the 9 processes, that is, hearing the Lord's glory, chanting his glories, constantly remembering him, offering prayers to him, serving the Lord's lotus feet, serving as a servant, worshipping him with flowers and incense, and serving him as a friend, completely offering the Lord one's own very self. So, yes, Hare Krishna. So, I'm going to now we'll start the class. The class is already live presently. So, we are just in chapter 3 right now. In chapter 1, we saw how the setting is set for the whole Bhagavad Gita. So, basically, the Bhagavad Gita is written for people who is actually like the ABC of the entire scriptures, and it does contain the essence of all the Vedas. And it is written especially for people like us, especially in the Kali Yuga. And that is why it is placed inside the Mahabharata. So it has a context of a war, so that people like us who would otherwise not relish this philosophy would just, seek to understand this great story. And in the process of enjoying the story, because our taste is yet low, then eventually the Gita is very carefully placed there in the battlefield, and there is a whole situation created by Krishna to give all of us this Gita, which is a human manual. And it's very unfortunate that, when people of us want to talk about the Gita and want to share this precious knowledge, which is telling us the purpose of our human life, we will find so many people who absolutely are clueless about this whole knowledge, and they won't even start to accept that there is a soul. They won't even start to accept that there is a God. So I know that we are all in level 2. So you are joining this class because you're far, above all these people who have not yet, even tried to understand the scriptures, and, they just put it off saying that it's just some ancient book with some ancient stuff written, and find different reasons not to trust the scriptures. So it is very disheartening sometimes, but Krishna clearly says there's no need to be disheartened, because Bahunam Janmanam Ante and Manushanam Sahasreshu. So in the chapter 7, we have these 2 verses which clearly tell us that it isn't easy for anyone to come to this path of Krishna consciousness. So let me begin today's class with this gratitude, the feeling of gratefulness to all of you for joining the class and giving me an opportunity to talk about the chapter 3. And it is always very relishing, and it is very beautiful to speak about Krishna and to discuss the Bhagavad Gita. I request you to please raise your hand or please participate if at all you want to contribute some new points or share something during the class. Uh, so chapter 1 was just setting the scene of the war, where we had both the parties looking at each other. And when Arjuna came to the center of the battlefield requesting Krishna to take him there, he was, he was struck with misery. He was struck with compassion and so many emotions, which is actually, it is falling down. It's a falling down from the spiritual position, because he's actually a great devotee. So the situation is created by Krishna, obviously, because he wants to give the Gita. And so Arjuna temporarily, he actually, starts um, kind of looking at his own pleasure, in the sense that how can I defeat my relatives, my guru. So all those feelings come when you are not able to be in Krishna consciousness. So for some time, he actually falls down for our benefit. And then we have Krishna in chapter 2, when Arjuna will finally surrender in the verse 2.7. And we had a good discussion in one of the classes about the word karpanya, which is miserliness. And we understood what is the term actually, why is it used over there. And so it's because of temporary miserliness, of his forgetfulness of this beautiful human birth, which is meant to satisfy Krishna, and not your own senses and your own sense of me, my, and possessiveness. It is meant to rise above all that. And this is the only time, that is in the human body only, can you raise your consciousness. And therefore, Krishna gives us the Gita after Arjuna will surrender, and he takes the position of a student, and Krishna will take the position of a teacher, and he will give us the Gita. So from chapter 2, we discussed chapter 2 is actually summary of the entire Gita, and we saw how it begins with the Sankhya Yoga, then it goes on in detail about Buddhi Yoga, which is, much, it is basically Bhakti Yoga. And then the last part especially is very beautiful because it talks about the Sthita Prajna verses, which tells us how important it is to have equanimity of mind. And therefore in chapter 3, which is the Karma Yoga or the Yoga of action, which means work, but work in Krishna consciousness. Work is karma. Simply doing action is karma. But karma yoga, it means to work in union with the Lord, which is work in Krishna consciousness. So, chapter 3 is a very important chapter. And before I proceed, I want to thank and I want to offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, based on whose teachings we are proceeding with this class and with all the teachings in ISKCON classes. I also pay my respectful obeisances to the beautiful deities of the Mangalore ISKCON Shri Shri Radha Govinda temple deities, and I seek their blessings so that I will only talk what is prescribed by Prabhupada and I don't add anything of my own. So the chapter 1 and 2, as I just said, is about observing of the army, and Lord Krishna's instructions begin thereafter. And chapter 2, we discussed about the first part is where Arjuna further talks about all his doubts. Then the second part from 2.11, Krishna gives jnana about there is no death for the soul. So there is a whole, that is Sankhya, where he talks about what the soul is not and what the soul is. And then there is a brief karma kanda, where Krishna actually talks about, relating to the material returns. Like, suppose you don't fight, what are you going to get? People are going to laugh at you. So these are all very material things. So he tries to tell Arjuna in the point of view of material things. You will get the kingdom and then you'll be happy. And if you go to heaven, you'll be happy. Whereas those are really not what he ultimately teaches us. So for a brief time, he just indulges in explaining the karma kanda viewpoint. He says, even if you're in the karma kanda level, where you seek material returns, you are looking for fruitive results, even then you should be fighting. Then after talking about karma kanda, he moves on to explain the highest one, which is buddhi yoga, nishkam karma, bhakti and all that, where he talks about doing nishkam karma. That means do your work, but without having any botheration about the result. So here we have all these very famous verses: karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalhetu mati sangosto karmani. So there Krishna talks about how you should never get attached to the idea of not doing your duty, and that how you should do your duty without attachments to the result. Now, there are many people who, after listening to this verse itself, they're like, okay, enough of the Gita. I can't imagine how I can do a single work without thinking of what the consequence is going to be. So, such people actually, very sadly, they miss out the essence of this beautiful scripture, which is the Gita. And I always feel so sorry, and I feel very sad for people who don't take the effort to, for at least for some time, accept what these scriptures are saying, so that they can even get an inkling as to how profound it is, for at least for some time, even if they don't accept it. Because later on Krishna says, you listen to me carefully, think over it, and then you can do what you want, right? So that's what Krishna says even in the end. So at least give it a hearing, give it the it is don't blindly reject it. Don't say this is blind faith. Also, don't blindly reject it. Right? You should accept and just take a peek into it. Maybe you'll get enlightenment, because the whole thing is about self-realization through bhakti. And then in the last part of chapter 2, we saw the beautiful explanation of the Sthita Prajna verses, which is being fixed in Krishna consciousness to such an extent that nothing shakes you at all. And that is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. Every time I get even a little anxious about anything, or I feel a little disturbed, due to some physical reasons or due to some occupational, tensions or stress or something, I immediately tell myself I'm not in Krishna consciousness. Because if I were, I wouldn't be anxious about this circumstance. I would be Sthita Prajna. So of course we are all just striving to be, even little bit for devotee, because we are all beginners here. So, but then these are all motivations, and we need to therefore, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. We have to do daily study of the Gita and the Bhagavatam. And that is very important, because otherwise the fall is just so easy. Why? Because Maya is very, very powerful. So that was how chapter 2 ended. And that led to question in Arjuna's mind. He has this huge confusion in his mind after listening to all this long discourse in chapter 2. And this is a very beautiful scripture also, because Arjuna so clearly keeps on asking questions on our behalf, and he clarifies things which would otherwise remain a confusion if Krishna concluded with chapter 2 and actually all the teachings are done. After chapter 2, there's really no need, because everything is already done in chapter 2. But Arjuna goes on asking questions, and Krishna goes on repeating and reinforcing and revising, especially for Kali Yuga people, because we are low in intelligence and we are highly lusty. So we need this continuous repetition. So, however many times we are listening to the Bhagavad Gita, it is still inadequate, because we are still not really getting it. We need the repetition. So then in 3.1 to 9, I finished last class where we spoke about the whole confusion that Arjuna had related to renunciation. Should I renunciate and meditate on the Sankhya philosophy and the soul and that sort of meditation which you were talking about? He tells Krishna, or do is it that you want me, like in verse 2.39, Krishna had spoken about these two kind of pathways. So Krishna is kind of suggesting both. So he is confused, and Krishna's intention is not actually jugglery of words and confusing Arjuna, but Arjuna wants to clarify it on our for our benefit. So the confusion is whether I should renunciate or whether I should work in Nishkama Karma, because you are kind of saying both. Can you give me a clear picture as to what I should do? And today I hope to finish all B, C, and D, but I will not speed and try to race and finish it. So we will go at a pace where we are being very clear at every step, at every verse, and there is no confusion. So 3. Let's move on, and we'll just revise 3.1 to 9. It's about the confusion, renunciation, action, and this is the entire summary of chapter 3 again. And in 3.1, there is Arjuna is saying, Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana. So he is saying, and the main point is, Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Neyojasi Keshava. So here he's again clarifying what is it he wants. Ekam Vada. Tell me one thing. Ekam Vada is what he says in verse 3.2. Give me clear directions. I don't want to be confused. So 2.11 to 30, Krishna spoke about the Sankhya philosophy, and thereafter he spoke about Nishkam Karma Yoga. So this is the reason for the confusion. So what is the connection between chapter 2 and chapter 3? How are they related? So we can see that in verse 2.49, we discuss this in great detail. The Durena Hyavaram. That is, keep all abominable activities far distant. How do you do that? Simply by chanting, simply by remembering Krishna all the time, by Buddhi Yoga, by keeping your mind always in Krishna consciousness. By using your intelligence, you avoid all abominable activities and thus not fight. By using his intelligence, he should avoid all abominable activities and thus not fight. Krishna is urging him to fight and thus fight actually. And then chapter 3 begins with Arjuna's question to clarify this contradictory instruction. And then we moved on. So this was 3.1, 3.2, and in 3.3, we have Krishna saying, "Oh, sinless Arjuna, I have already explained these two classes of people." So he's giving the answer here, and already he explains the answer very clearly in the first verse itself. He says that some are inclined to understand Krishna by empirical philosophical speculation, and others are inclined to know him by devotional verse. So, what are these? By devotional service. So, what are these two parts? The first one is Sankhya Yoga or philosophical speculation, and we had discussed how actually we need both. Krishna will actually clearly say that you can't only have one, because philosophy without bhakti is dry, and bhakti without philosophy is simply fanaticism. It is simply, just emotion. So, which is not what Srila Prabhupada teaches us. He talks about how it is important that we have to have bhakti, and at the same time, we have to have the philosophical background. We should be investigating and understanding what why, what is the basis of this bhakti. So that is what he wants us to do. Sankhya Yoga, if you go only by Sankhya Yoga, it's a very indirect path. It depends entirely on the personal endeavor. It is there is no surety of success, and the reason the fall down is very, very highly possible. And then initial purification is required by doing the prescribed duty. But when you're in Krishna consciousness or in bhakti, then it's a very direct, straightforward path. It's like taking the elevator or the lift rather than going step by step. It depends on Krishna's mercy. That is, it's a comparison is very beautiful. I never, tired of explaining this comparison or this analogy related to the monkey baby and the kitten, right? So the monkey baby, he has to cling to the mother, for support. And the mother would be simply running about. So this is the Sankhya Yoga where you have to put in your own effort and endeavor personally. Whereas the kitten, he's not bothered. He's depending entirely on his mother. So the baby kitten, the mother will be holding him on his neck, and he's just, so relaxed and with complete knowledge that this mother, she's protecting me. Absolutely no worry, no struggle, no personal struggle at all. And when you do that, Krishna has said in many verses that the degree to which Krishna will support you is based on the degree of your surrender. So once more, I'm just pointing out a few things because I have seen how some people, they hate the word surrender. Why should I surrender? So the whole point of your being entrapped in this material world is because you refuse to surrender. And that is why you're here. So unless you don't understand this basic point, that if you don't surrender, the word, there's no need to hate the word surrender. If you don't surrender, and understand that you are actually just a part and parcel, a tiny part and parcel, although a very powerful one. You're a tiny spark, but you have the same qualities as the Lord himself. But yet you can never be the Lord himself. You are a tiny part and parcel, and it's your duty and responsibility to understand your constitutional position, so that when you understand that, you will actually understand what is your dharma. Dharma means your natural duty. And what is your natural duty? It is to serve the Lord. So you will understand what is your natural duty or your dharma. And then there is surety of success. So here also, I think I had also spoken in the last class about Haridas Thakur, who, in spite of a prostitute coming and disturbing him, he was hardly disturbed. He was not disturbed at all, actually. Even we also have the example of Ambarish Maharaj. The big demon was created by Durvasa Muni, and he was least disturbed. So such people who are very strong in Krishna consciousness and in Buddhi Yoga, they just do. There is no chance of falling, because yes, it's a very strong path. It's the ultimate path. And the ends and the means are the same, because as soon as you're in Krishna consciousness, you already have reached the end or the goal of human life. You're already there. Whereas in Sankhya Yoga, you're depending on your personal endeavor. So you have, so many examples like the Muni who was meditating under the Yamuna River or the Kalindi River, getting distracted with the mating, seeing the mating of two fish. And there are so many other examples, right? So people who are entirely based upon their spiritual journeys entirely based upon meditation or yoga, and they're struggling, they want to do it by personal endeavor, they just surrender to Krishna. They don't look at Krishna as a person, they are just depending on their own endeavor. They will they're not sure of their success, and they have a lot of purification to do, and that's why it's a longer path. Krishna clearly says that it's a much longer path, although it is wrong to think that it's a different path. It's actually leading to Krishna. It also leads to Krishna equally, but only difference is it is more difficult and it is longer. And in 3.4 we talk about, not by merely abstaining from work can we achieve freedom, nor by renunciation can we achieve perfection. So Krishna is talking about just simply renouncing. It doesn't serve the purpose. You don't really reach the end simply by renunciating. You need to, it's like the mango needs to first become ripe and come out, and then it is sweet and it comes out naturally, rather than forcefully plucking it and making it ripe, so that won't be tasty also. So it's not reached its purpose yet. So we need to, obviously, when you're into devotion for a long period of time, Krishna will create circumstances where you will find that there is no reason for you to do any work. For example, Haridas Thakur, he has no reason. He doesn't do anything else. People are envious of him. The whole day he's chanting. He's just chanting from morning till night, and people are serving him. They're respecting him. He has a lot of respect in his surrounding. So there's a lot of envy. How is it that he is just sitting and doing nothing and only chanting? So that is a level where ultimately you reach when you're in bhakti, where Krishna will provide everything for you, and you will just have to be in Krishna consciousness. At the same time, such people in this chapter we will see that such people who are highly elevated devotees, and they are in the they have actually reached Vaikuntha in this very body. Such people, it's not that they will stop working. They will do work for the sake of the common masses. So it's the example given. Actually, the only example which Krishna explicitly gives is of King Janaka. So King Janaka, we will see in one of the following verses in chapter 3, how his example is given to show us that even amidst the luxury, King Janaka was having, his palace was amazingly luxurious, and it was very easy for him to get lost in the material luxuries around him. But he was in full concentration all the time. He was working with the Lord in his mind. He was never, there was never a moment when he was not in yoga. So Manmanava Bhava Mad Bhakto was fully realized by him. So much so that even Narada, was wondering how come a king in such a situation where he's surrounded in the lap of luxury, how is it that he is called a Raja Rishi? Actually, he was called a Raja Rishi because he was totally detached. He would do all his duties best, because especially one who is detached, you may think that he's not doing his work well because of his detachment. You need to be attached to do the work. Actually, it's quite the contrary. A person who is able to give all his energy in the doing rather than thinking about the result, or in getting attached to the material things around you, which are all temporary, their quality of work, as I had, I think, mentioned before also, is much, much higher because of that complete focus that they have, and the dedication, which is, that I'm giving this, I'm doing this for you, O Krishna, I'm doing it for your pleasure. So rather than satisfying your own material senses, you're only doing everything to satisfy the Lord's senses. And that makes all the difference. So, although outwardly, such a person like King Janaka is simply doing the role of a king, he's simply doing what any other king would be doing. But there's a huge difference. One is doing it in Krishna consciousness for the pleasure of Krishna with no attachment and not at all allured by all the luxury around him, and the other would be driven by material desires, and the work is done entirely for different, running after these pleasures which are all temporary, and there's so much of anxiety involved. Although outwardly it may appear that both are really striving hard and they're doing their best, but the person who is in material consciousness is in anxiety, and the person who's in Krishna consciousness is completely in peace. He is Sthita Prajna. So that is the huge difference. So Krishna says that it's not about renunciate, being a renunciate. You need to do your duty. That's very important. And he says that nahi kashit chanamapi jatu tishtati akarma krit. So everyone is actually, we may think that we are the ones doing things. We are the ones who are taking actions, but we are simply led by the qualities that we have acquired from the modes of material nature in our previous births. So we are driven entirely by our karma, by the material modes of nature that we have acquired, and we can't stop even for a moment because we are in the clutches of Maya. Why are we driven by the material modes of nature? Why are we in doing action in either tamogun, sattvagun, or rajogun all the time? Because we have not reached a Shuddha Sattva stage. So Maya is actually, we are playing to the tunes of Maya. That's the reason why we are in this stage. And then we spoke about how Sankhya Yoga is impractical since soul is active in nature. So thinking that you can simply sit and meditate doesn't really work. So it's very active, so it must act. The soul constantly needs engagement. And if you are doing devotional service, there is no loss at all. And even if there is a fall down, so there is a chance that even if you're in devotional service, we are not pure devotees yet. So there could be fall down. And then, there's a question, beautiful question in one of the chapters, that Arjuna asks, what if I'm not successful in devotional service? And then I'm lost in the material world also. I have not had achievement. And in spiritual life also, I have not really reached the highest goal. Well, what happens to such a person? And Krishna explains very clearly that there is absolutely no loss, even if there is a fall down. You will exactly continue from where you left in your next birth, either by being born into a transcendental family where the family members, your parents who are already into Krishna consciousness, or you'll be born in a rich or luxurious family where you don't have to bother about your food and about your daily necessities, so that you can concentrate or focus on spiritual journey. So occupation dictated by, whereas if it's if your occupation, if you don't occupy yourself in Krishna consciousness, your occupation will be dictated by Maya. Maya, that is illusory energy of the Lord. So in if you're in contact with material nature, that is when you will acquire the material modes. And then there are prescribed duties which will purify the soul, and it will lead you to Krishna consciousness. So there is also a pathway that you can take, which is the normal one, the dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So that is also where you simply do all your prescribed duties, and then you gradually purify your soul, and then you can lead to Krishna consciousness. So those were the points discussed with 3.5. In 3.6, we saw about this saint, about this rishi, and how he has a cigarette, which actually reveals that he is after sense objects. Still, he's just a pretender. So I explained how Krishna has used a very sharp word called mithyachara. So he's just a pretender. And we can see in the Bhagavad Gita, when we talk to people about Hinduism, there are many people who say that how can we trust, there are so many dongis, so many people who are just cheats. They are charas. Yes, they are. So Krishna is telling us clearly there are people who will be pretenders. So then he is giving us, he gives us a picture, the entire picture in the Gita. You actually understand the whole world, and you are able to answer every existential question if you understand the Bhagavad Gita. There is no loophole at all if you really understand it. So in 3.7, we saw how if a sincere person tries to control his senses by the mind and he begins karma yoga without attachment, he is far superior than this person who is trying to pretend that he has controlled his senses, and that as if he has, he's a renunciate. So pretender is actually a greatest cheater. And Srila Prabhupada has said how the pretenders are actually a great disturbance to society. They just pretend that okay, we are gopis, we have these sahaj yogis. They pretend that they have reached the status of Radharani, and they are just basically causing disturbance and taking people away from what the scriptures are actually teaching. So, although they pretend to be in deep meditation, their mind is dwelling on sense objects, and such a philosophy has no value at all. It's their knowledge is stolen by illusory energy of Lord. Maya apahrita jnana. So, we will see in chapter 7, Krishna talks about such people who are atheists, or who actually, their knowledge, they have so much of knowledge, and it's all material knowledge, and so they are Maya apahrita jnana. Their knowledge has been stolen by Maya. So that will be the end of such a person. And there are social orders. There's a varnashrama system where you go by brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasa. You follow all the rules and regulations, and there is gradual purification. And the sincere person in verse 3.7, we talk about a sincere person. He is able to control his mind, he engages in Krishna consciousness, and he is far superior, as Krishna just said in the previous verse. So 3.8 talks about niyatam. That is, you should constantly do your duty. Karmaja here akarmana. You should not you should not be like not working. Why? Because we need to work to maintain our physical body. So it's sometimes so appealing to just think that, okay, just as Arjuna was thinking, why not just leave all these work? And now we understood that this material world is just it's just Maya. Now I have understood all these things. Why can't I just forget everything, all my relationships, and just sit and be in Krishna consciousness? Well, that's not what Krishna wants us to do. He clearly says that you need to do all the things you have to do to maintain your body, because that you have to do. You will have to do the all your duties at the same time. You should be able to be in Krishna consciousness, not that you will leave all your duties and be in Krishna consciousness. So work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, the work will cause bondage. So this we have seen very clearly in level 1. It must have been very clear how we have karma, vikarma, and akarma. So when you're doing work as a sacrifice, then there is no bondage at all, because Maya will run away from somebody who is in Krishna consciousness. She will dare not try to entrap you. The moment you are in Krishna consciousness, she has no business there, because you have already achieved, you have passed the test. So she will still keep trying to, put you in. That's why we say she's very powerful, because it's a duty to ensure that we are not going to go back to spiritual world and cause disturbances. It is our duty to ensure that we have truly realized, we are truly self-realized and Krishna realized, and we are in Krishna consciousness. We are suitable to go back to the Vaikuntha Loka, and then she will not come even close to you. So Krishna is saying, "O son of Kunti, you do your duties for Krishna's satisfaction, and then you will be completely free." That is akarma. Don't do karma, don't do vikarma, don't bother, oh, is it going to give me sin, or is it going to give me, greatness, or don't bother about the results. I am telling you, right? I am the Lord. Krishna clearly says in the Bhagavad Gita so many times, I am Bhagavan, I am Krishna. I am the Lord of the universe. I am the controller of everything. I am the supreme friend. I am the supreme benefactor. I am the supreme provider. So he gives us so many times, he talks about how he is a supreme father of everyone, of absolutely like every living entity. He is a father, he's the origin of everything. So he's saying, I am telling you, right? So then you need to just follow me. There's nothing else that you need to do. And then we also finished this slide, I believe, last class, about the text 8, whereas the prescribed duties, when you perform it, there is purification of heart. And when if you renounce the prescribed duties, then you fall down, because the activity is given up before purifying the heart. So that is a mithyachara. So Arjuna is actually right now, he's in the position of a kshatriya. He's a position of a garhasya. That is his position in terms of the varnashrama system. The varna is the class where you are, the kshatriya, brahmana, shudra, whatever is your inclination based on your past modes and the past karma, guna karma vibhagasha. So Krishna says that it is because of gunas and karma, not by birth, that you become a whatever this you are, division you are, varna you are. So he is a kshatriya, and he is also in terms of his life, he has finished his brahmacharya ashram, and now he is in his garhasya ashram. So based on your varnashrama dharma, you are supposed to engage in war, and you're not supposed to renounce and go to the forest. So that's what he makes very, very clear over here. Work should not be given up capriciously, just, in a very light way, thinking that it's a very light thing. Krishna makes it very clear that you have to do your work based on the varnashrama that you are in, and whatever is your position in the world as per your birth, wherever, whatever you've acquired now in this your situation, whether you're in which ashram and what are your tendencies, you should do work accordingly. Work should be not given up capriciously without purification of the material propensities. Now we are covered. I'll start with 3.9. So in 3.9, perform work as a sacrifice to Vishnu, or work causes bondage. Okay. So action or work which is performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, not binding but liberating. Such work is not binding but liberating. So I am, I'm repeating, I know, but these concepts require repetition. So please bear, or just you can just think that it is for our benefit, that the repetition is being done again and again, because we need to understand it with clarity. And how do we do work? It can be under the guidance of a spiritual master. So this is one important quality, again, which material people, mostly just cannot accept. Why they say, should we take up, the guidance of a spiritual master? He's also another person. Why should I surrender or, try to understand from a spiritual master? So they don't understand that the devotee or the guru is actually a representative of the Lord himself. And of course, there are many mithyachar people who are, the dhongis, or they are the people who are cheats, who are pretending to be elevated, but they're actually not. And it's very difficult to sometimes understand who is really pure. One quick way to understand is he is giving you only Krishna consciousness. The only thing he's leading you to is Krishna. Then you know that that is a true spiritual master, and he is free. So only one who is free can free you. One who is bound himself with different material desires and is seeking different things from you, such a person cannot free you because he is also bound by his desires. So if a person is able to give you Krishna, and he is, all that is all he's interested in, such a person will be your true spiritual master. So that is why, thankfully, we have this movement of the ISKCON, which is coming in the true. We will see that tomorrow in chapter 4 how the disciplinary succession really, really matters. Why it is so important to go by the disciplinary succession. Again, there will be, sometimes people around in the movement who may be, I shouldn't be saying this, but probably they may be not yet there, not yet ready to be a spiritual master. But then, if you really pray to Krishna and with your sincere soul, you really seek, Krishna will give you guidance. He will be there in your heart as your Chetu Guru, as your Guru inside your heart, the Paramatma. And when you turn to him, he will guide you. He will tell you what to do exactly. So you don't have to struggle, be like the kitten, don't be like the monkey child. And you will gradually be elevated and develop transcendental loving service for the Lord. And then you will go back to Godhead, which is the ultimate aim of the human birth. Otherwise, if you're not going to follow this path, then your action will cause bondage. If you don't accept the Guru, if you don't do work for Krishna, and if you keep on saying that this is all some mythology or this is all some scripture, of the past, and it's not relevant to us, then you will simply have to go through cycle of birth and death. And some people, they are okay with it. Fine. They will come to this only Bahunam Janmanamante. But that doesn't stop a devotee from talking about, about Krishna. The devotee constantly tries to give Krishna to everyone. So all of you in level 2 will, are also eventually on this path of spreading Krishna consciousness, of making people aware of how important. Why do you do that? Because you automatically, once you get it, you feel so much of compassion for people who are running after different material sense objects, and you feel that, you feel sorry for them. Why are they running after, when the prime duty is, of course, to take care of your body and do your duty, for keeping your body and soul together and taking care of your family members. You have to do all those things, but at the same time, that's not your prime duty. You need to understand that the human birth is for a higher purpose, and you want to give this knowledge to as many people, even though there will be many who will just not take it. So you have to be very careful. You need to keep coming back to devotee association so that you will be able to stay steady in the devotional service. Ravi Prabhu has posted the attendance a number of times. I request all of you to kindly mark your attendance. Please click on the link in the chat box. So I'm reminding you, the chat is there for you to click on and mark your attendance for the day, for the day's class. So those who are doing action without, not for Krishna and not under the guidance of the spiritual master, they are actually doing it for their own sense gratification. They don't accept soul. They don't accept the divinity. They don't accept these concepts of karma, vikarma, akarma. It's all only because of their sense desire for sense gratification. And so there's nothing. They will keep going into a circle of birth and death based on the different good actions and bad actions that they have performed in their lifetime. And then I think we already did this also last class. I think I'm taking a lot of time for revising today. Extended yoga ladder. We understood how the yoga ladder of reaching the culmination of bhakti yoga can be really long and extended, like from animal life to karma kanda, then sakam karma, where you're doing actions, but you're doing it for something for yourself. You want the fruits of your work. Nishkam, where you realize that nothing belongs to you, and you realize that you are not the doer. Actually, you're never the doer. So then the beauty of spiritual life is that your focus is only and only on the performance of the duty for Krishna. You're not bothered about the result because you know that it's not really yours. So Nishkam Karma Yoga is that stage. And then, from Nishkam, you also accumulate knowledge, and then you may try different Ashtanga yoga. So you first understand the sunshine, and then you get closer, you understand the sun disk, and finally the bhakti. So that is a very extended yoga ladder. You can choose to come to the progressive yoga ladder, where from animal life, karma kanda, sakam, you don't do all the yoga and all. You don't have to first understand that there is a light, and the radiation of the Lord. You're there. You want to be lost over there for some time, and then you understand that okay, the sun disk. You understand the Paramatma feature, and then you come to bhakti. You're not in the extended ladder, because you understand the Gita from a true devotee. You know that there is a progressive, shorter path, and you have the express elevator, which is what we're all actually trying to be in. It's not easy though. You have to be completely surrendered, and you have to accept association of pure devotees continuously, and you have to engage in a sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti. That is express elevator where you reach the highest goal of human life, hopefully in this birth itself. So, and now we are moving on to the new section, which is 3.10 to, sorry. Okay. We are moving on from the section 3.10 to 3.16. So we're going to understand how we move from karma kanda to karma yoga. So if a person is too attached to his material life, he cannot perform nishkama karma yoga. You cannot have both. You can't have it and eat it too. That's not possible. So you need to give up your attachment to material life. Only then you can, and which is possible when you attach yourself to Krishna. Automatically this detachment to material life will happen, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be rude, or you're going to have no affection for your family members. You are going to protect and take care of the belongings which are given to you temporarily, but you understand it is temporary and that it doesn't actually belong to you. You take care of the people who are there in your world, your friends, your relatives. You take care of them, but now you're doing it in a different purview. You understand that they all belong to Krishna, and so that changes the whole formula, and everything you do becomes perfect, and your relationships actually become beautiful. So if and you're doing your work for Krishna describes the yoga ladder. Okay, for them, for the people who are attached to material life, that it is for them that Krishna describes the yoga ladder, and he gradually moves from karma kanda to karma yoga. Srila Prabhupada, he ends all the purports in this section by glorifying the supremacy and the need for Sankirtan. So it is basically, we are all actually trying to be Prabhupada soldiers, and we're all trying to fulfill the prediction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is to engage oneself in Sankirtan movement and do congregational chanting and congregational kirtan. So that is the ultimate idea, because when we spread Krishna consciousness, the whole world will be will be very peaceful. It will go as per the way it should. So in 3.9, I just wanted to specify one particular term. It says in 3.9, yajnarth. So yajnarth is actually for the sake of sacrifice, yajnartha. So 3.9 verse, it goes like this. Yajnarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kanteya mukta sangha samachara. So here the yajnartha is about it's about doing things as a sacrifice. There's an analogy of a soldier, right? So when soldier kills his enemies, it is considered to be great. He's glorified. But if he comes home and then he has another enemy in his home and he simply kills him, then he will be put in jail. So Arjuna too, initially he was not willing to fight for personal satisfaction. Later he is willing to fight for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is how he becomes a great devotee. If the Supreme Lord is satisfied by our doing our duties, then we are freed from the reactions. I'm just repeating once more. There are pious activities and impious activities, but both of them lead to bondage. So, above both of these, there is a devotion activity. People don't understand that this human form of life is actually meant for getting freedom from this whole bondage. So, this whole goal is missed out by most people. So anyone acting on this bodily concept of life with no spiritual understanding is actually like an animal. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.84.13, there is a reference of this term go khara, which means cow and an ass. So the animal is, actually he's blind. Animal is not opening his eyes and seeing the knowledge. He is even happy when he is taken to the slaughterhouse also. So people who are without spiritual consciousness, without Krishna consciousness, are actually simply going to be slaughtered by the laws of material nature. Just like an animal, even though he's going to be slaughtered, right? He's not sorry. And similarly, that is a case of the whole human society today. It's pathetic, actually, if you go to see. People don't even want to read the Gita. So there is a great need. That's why we are having all these classes. That's why ISKCON Mangaluru and Namnishta Prabhu, they are trying their best to give this knowledge to everybody. Why? Because there is actually a great need for Krishna consciousness movement. People are so fallen. They are reluctant to even hear about the Bhagavad Gita, where everything is so clearly explained. They're simply living the lives of animals. Like the Upanishads say, Uttishta Jagrata Prapya Varan Nibodhata. So it says, get up. Please get up. Uttishta. You have got this human body. Now get up and get out of the clutches of the cycle of birth and death. So we have to get people to realize that this, don't you get tired of this entanglement with the material life? Entanglement from the whole evolutionary process from lower grades of life with the lower consciousness and aquatics, and gradually we come to land. And originally the whole planet was actually in water. For example, in Dashavatara Stotra we see Pralaya Payodhi Jale Dhritavanasi Vedam. So there was Jale, Pralaya Payodhi Jale. So there was, it's all in water in the beginning. Then there is an evolutionary process which is mentioned in the Vishnu Purana, and it is presented in a perverted way by the Western scholars like Darwin. So, Darwin, he has presented a similar concept, but he has, perverted it. He has not been able to present in the deeper things which are related to the soul moving. Why is it going from one body to another? On what basis? In lower grades of life, this entanglement is conducted by nature. And then later on, when you come to the human consciousness, that is, we have a higher consciousness. And now we have to, this is a time for us to realize our goal. So, as given in Hitopadesha, verse 25, Ahara Nidra Bhaya Maithunam Cha Samanam Etat Pashubhir Naranam. So, it means on account of our developed consciousness, we can get out of this entanglement, right? Because we are in ignorance, we don't care for all this birth, that we think it's all normal, and we don't take it seriously. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, verse 13.9 also, there is Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukha Dashanu Darshanam. It's possible in the human life to stop these and get out of the entanglement. In the human form, if we do yagya. So why am I going on speaking so much? Is because this chapter is going to talk a lot about yagya. So I want to be starting this, the whole class with a deeper understanding of yagya. If we don't perform yagya, then we become more and more entangled, and we will contaminate ourselves with the material modes. So that is the reason why we have to clearly look at this chapter 10, the chapter 3, and understand what exactly is yagya. What does Krishna mean by the term yagya? The godless society thinks that everything is done by nature. But this is foolishness. A person in knowledge, he knows that the elements of nature are controlled by demigods. So in chapter 3, we're also going to get a very nice and deep understanding of demigods. Who are demigods? The demigods are actually the appointed innumerable assistants or servants of the Lord. They are actually the empowered administrators of the material affairs. The Vedic literature is telling us that if sacrifices are not offered to the demigods, there will be irregularity in terms of rain, excessive heat, excessive cold, and people are going to suffer. What is the purpose of all the yajna? It is actually the ultimately, we have in the verse 5.29, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasa. Who is the enjoyer of all these yajnas and tapasas? Krishna. Krishna is telling very clearly that ultimate satisfaction is of the Lord, not the demigods. Ultimately, the satisfaction of whatever you're doing for demigods, the purpose is to satisfy the Lord. And the demigods also know that. So in Vedic literature, in Kathopanishad, verse 2.2.13, there is Eko Bahunam Vidadhati Kaman. The Supreme Lord is actually supplying all the necessities of life for all the 8,400,000 or 84 lakh forms, out of which the 400,000 are human forms. For all of them, Krishna is the supreme supplier, and there is really, nothing that we need to fear. The side effects of doing yajna is that everything gets sanctified and purified. So yajna, when you do yajna, you're sanctifying the food. When you eat sanctified food, your existence gets sanctified. And then the finer tissues of the memory, it also gets sanctified. And then in that position, when your memory is sanctified because of eating sanctified food or prasad, you are able to start thinking of the path of liberation. Now, talking about liberation, there are two definitions of liberation, right? So, there are some people who are impersonalists who don't look at Krishna as a person. For them, liberation is as if they will merge with the Lord. So they think of merging with the brilliance of the Lord, and then they have to eventually fall down. Whereas the liberation for a devotee is also called liberation only. But what is that? It is Vaikuntha. It is liberation from anxieties, where you have understood your constitutional position, you have understood the absolute truth, and you have realized yourself as being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and you are in devotion, and you have come to understand the love of Krishna, and you are in that bhakti basically. So that is it's like Kunti Mata, right? She says, Tvayi me ananya vishaya matir madhupate asakrit ratim udbhata dadha gangeva mudanvati. So she says that just as a river flows towards the ocean, it's like that I want to be. So you want a devotee wants to, constantly direct everything he's doing towards the ocean. So the devotee compares liberation to the river falling into the ocean. Whereas that there is a personalist, a devotee, I mean personalist, who looks at Krishna as a person, he wants to direct all his energies to doing everything for Krishna satisfaction. Whereas those who are an impersonalist, he directs all his energies into merging. He wants to, just get rid of these material difficulties, and he simply wants to merge and become one with God. And that is also actually Maya's game. That is such a person is actually greatly entrapped by Maya. And he is going back the same purpose, the same, he's causing the same loop because of which he came to the material world itself, which is Lord over the material world. So it's already 8, and I have not moved a single verse further except 3.10. So moving on to the next verses, 3.11, it says, 3.11 says, Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantah shreyah paramavapsyatha. So it says that the demigod, like I was talking about, they get pleased by the sacrifices. So we think that the people who are just listening to science and material knowledge, they think that the world is just working by itself, but actually everything is being controlled by demigods. And that is why when you do sacrifices, the demigods get pleased, and then they will cooperate. There is a cooperation between men and demigods, and prosperity will reign. This is a very difficult concept, and I have always been amazed by it. This whole circle of sacrifice, which we will be talking about. So this is, the cycle of sacrifice. Um, I think Ravi Prabhu is again and again sending attendance. It's already 8. I request all of you to put attendance. I think today I will not be able to do the chapter 3. Definitely, we are still. I just have been only revising. Tomorrow we will complete chapter 3, and next week onwards we will start chapter 4, because chapter 3 is a very important, a lot of important concepts. We will just stop with the cycle of sacrifice, which I think is very important. Read requires a lot of concentration to understand. So first begins with the Lord. Where does the cycle of sacrifice begin? It begins with the understanding that there is a Lord and he is the supreme controller, and he is able to breathe the Vedas. So we come to when we think of, when look at the description of the Lord Krishna given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that we have Krishna's, as Paramatma, his hands and legs are there everywhere. Every part of his body can perform the function of every other part. So, for example, he can just look and he can create the entire material world just by his sight, just by his breathing. He can create the entire Vedas. So, Prabhupada keeps on explaining that when you look at these descriptions of the Lord of Krishna, and you look at it with your limited material understanding, it's like a frog in the well concept, where you think, okay, how is it possible that he can breathe the Veda? So if you think like that in terms of material, your limited material brain, you keep trying to analyze, you will not get it. You need to understand and look at it with the Jnana Chakshu. You need to look at it from the eyes of the scriptures. And you need to accept the power, his omnipotence of the Lord. That's what omnipotence means. It means that the Lord is capable of doing anything with any part of his body, and he has a personal form, and he's able to breathe the Vedas. The Vedas come from his breath. And what do the Vedas give us? It gives us about all these dharmartha, kama, moksha. It gives us the duties of varnashrama dharma. It tells us what we're supposed to do. It tells us that the birth is not the decider of whether you're a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra. In fact, in the Kali Yuga, we're all Shudras. Why? Because we're all working. Most of us are simply working for salary. And the ISKCON movement actually gives us, the ability not just to move from the Shudra by the knowledge we gain. We actually come not just to the level of a Brahmana, but then we come to the level of Vaishnava. And so when you finish your level 2 and then you move on maybe by level 3, level 4, or if you start understanding the beauty of chanting and you start chanting 16, you can straight away do your Bhakti Shastri, and then you can straight away get your first initiation. You can get your Brahmana initiation thereafter, and then there are a lot of steps, which you can go through. So it's very beautiful. You have to just stay with this, stay with the association of devotees, keep on reading and understanding the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam from the classes that are provided by ISKCON Mangalore, for which I am extremely grateful. And so after the duties, we have the sacrifice. So if you are, when you're doing all your duties as per the Vedas, and then you will sacrifice the results. You don't, you have complete understanding that the results don't belong to you and that you're not actually the doer. And when you do sacrifice, the demigods are pleased and they will shower rain and prosperity and give you all auspiciousness because they are pleased with your sacrifice. And from rain comes grain. So the grain is actually your body. Actually your body is made up of the grain that you eat. So even if you're eating so many other things, the grain is always an integral part of the diet. And so you will offer the grain because you're grateful that the grain has been provided to you. You will offer it to the Lord again. So anywhere if this is cut, this cycle of sacrifice, you don't go by the cycle in your life, that is when you have all sorts of different disasters. And Krishna uses very strong words in this chapter. He calls somebody who doesn't offer his food to be a thief. If you're not expressing your gratitude and you think that everything is because of you yourself, you're actually a thief. And what you're eating is verily sin. Krishna uses these very powerful words. And so, chapter 3, when you're in level 1, at least when I was in level 1, it was quite shaking. It was quite, something where you think that, okay, I have to offer everything to Krishna and I have to eat only prasada, otherwise I'm eating sin. So all these concepts were quite difficult in the beginning. But then as you keep listening and coming into Krishna consciousness, you will find it to be very simple. In fact, it's very blissful. And then you have to basically keep listening, and then you have to keep having the faith, and you have to keep chanting, most importantly. So by performance of yajnas, all activities become purified, like I said a while ago as well. Ahara shuddho, sattva shuddho, dhruva smriti, smriti lambhe, sarve granthinam, vipramoksha. By performing yajna, your eatables become sanctified. I think I already did this. And then your brain, finer tissues become sanctified, and then you can start thinking of path of liberation. And all these lead to Krishna consciousness, which is a great necessity. So we will end with the verse 3.12 today, because it's already time. And here it says that in charge of all the necessities are the demigods, like how I had already discussed earlier. And being satisfied by the sacrifice that you're doing, the demigods supply the necessities. But he who enjoys such gifts of offering them without offering them to the demigods is certainly a thief. So this is a very powerful word. The thief reference actually is quite shaking, right? You feel that, oh my God, have I been a thief all these years when I didn't know that I'm supposed to offer? So with that, I think I will 3.12 is very sad. I couldn't make progress, but I think because of the long gap, you will understand and forgive me for any mistakes I have done. And from tomorrow, we will try and conclude chapter 3. Does anybody want to share something? Because we are actually past 8 and I don't want to exceed the time more. Hare Krishna. I have tried to slow down and I have tried to do a
Ha-
thorough discussion. Yes, Ravi
Ha-
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji. This class is wonderful, Mataji, and very engrossing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ravi Prabhu. I hope
Um,
that your Bhakti Vrikshas is going well. You have already reached, I think, almost chapter 3 is getting over, no, in the Bhakti Vriksha?
Yes, Mataji. We reached up to chapter 3.
Okay. So tomorrow, yeah, I have done a complete recap actually, Jalpa Mataji, uh,
Hmm.
because there was a long gap also. So I think it was worth the time that we have spent together in recap. Tomorrow we will, get a complete understanding of chapter 3, which talks about lust. By the end of the chapter, we understand lust very beautifully. And there are a lot of concepts of sacrifice. We have some more, verses which talk about sacrifice. And chapter 3 is a very beautiful chapter and it gives a lot of directions and takes us in the path of Krishna consciousness very beautifully. So I'm ending the class today. Anybody would like to share something more, Hare Krishna, some guidelines or some reflections? Okay. So Hare Krishna, please join me tomorrow, same time. And Vansha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.